To a brand new edition of War Up on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson, talking about the team state championships from this past weekend. We are officially completed with the high school wrestling season, and we're going to be looking ahead as well as we have the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic coming up this weekend. Full slate of coverage for that coming up as well. So just wanted to first talk about the end of our high school season, Jeff. I mean, it's hard to believe that, end of March, we finally wrap it up. I know it's been a crazy year, but at the end of the day, the team state championships happened. I know there was a lot of doubt, and that's something you and I questioned a lot in the beginning of the season, but they happened. We have two champions. We have top four medalists. May not be the true top four, but pretty darn close.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty coming into this. We had talked about this previous times on the show that, we weren't even sure we were going to have a state dual team tournament at this time. So, yeah, it came at a weird time, but it got done. And I said it before, I'll say it again, they should have just shipped the championship title to Waynesburg. Do you see how Waynesburg had the sign made up already? Like they come off the mat and there's just magically this 2021 PIAA state team champions banner out. They knew, right? They knew, and I'm not saying they were overconfident or cocky, but they knew how good they were, and they showed it, right? And they beat down my alma mater, CD, pretty bad in the finals, and like you said, I'm just glad we got it in, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, there's no, I wouldn't say there's an asterisk or anything next to it, right? Because you know who your champion are. It's going to be the champion regardless of how the tournament played out. But at the end of the day, it's good to know who your true team state champions are. So we'll talk about Waynesburg in a little bit since we mentioned the dominant performance. Things were a little bit closer in AA. So I want to start there, where we had Reynolds taking on Burrell in the bottom half of the bracket, while we had Southern Columbia taking on Boiling Springs in the top half. All four of these matches were pretty close. But starting off, obviously, with this being a WPIL show, Reynolds and Burrell. And Reynolds gets it done. They do defeat Burrell, but boy, was it close. 35-30. And you could look at a couple of different matches in this one to show that it could have really went either way.
Yeah, and so Eric and I talked about it on the PA Power Hour, which I don't know if you tuned into or not, Greg, but Eric, he had a rebuttal to your remarks on the previous War Up. So
you know what, Jeff, I gotta interrupt you for a second.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
you're trying to set us up, I think, for a war, Eric and I. I think that's what's going on here.
Oh, so you think I'm the problem?
Well, see, because
I didn't say anything about your shirt.
I mean, you didn't have my back. I mean, you did comment on my bar, which you told me to sit there. So I mean, but I come back at Eric, and now you're saying Eric's coming back at me. Like, I don't know. There's a middleman in here. So
I'm not playing the middle. I'm just I'm refereeing. That's all I am. I'm just saying we need action here. We're going out of bounds. Let's push the action towards the center. Speaking of pushing the action towards the center, Burrell and Reynolds, it really came down. It was a lot closer than I think even I expected coming down the wire, because there was a lot of matches that could have went either way. And Burrell had such a good match against Chestnut Ridge. And Reynolds, they're now a 5-time straight PIAA team title champion. So, I mean, what they bring to the table. But it started off very, very good for Burrell. Nick Salerno gets a decision over Kane Kettering 5-3 at 132 pounds. That was huge because I thought that was a toss-up match. Aaron Edwards then gets a major decision at 138. Ian Oswalt gets a major over Alex Ishko. That was right there. 3 matches right off the bat that I thought, man, Burrell's potentially in the driver's seat. Now, the biggest match, in my opinion, and I said this before, it was 160. Damian Barr versus Jalen. What's Jalen Wagner? That Jalen Wagner. I keep on wanting to say Reynolds for some reason. Jalen Wagner. He's down 3-1, and Damian Barr's on top. Wagner's able to get a reversal to his back and get the fall. That was huge. We saw Damian Barr play the hero so many different times for Burrell, and this time, he's unfortunately on the receiving end of that, because Jalen Wagner really just came out strong, and that really turned the momentum, in my opinion, to Reynolds.
Yeah, and then you look from there, AJ Corrado, who's typically picking up 6, only gets a major decision, which helps out Burrell or helps out Reynolds a ton. and then Colby Christie ends up giving up a fall to Cole Toy, and then the forfeits you knew were coming as well for Burrell at 285 as well as 113. It was just tough to come back from at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you going into that knowing you're giving up a forfeit at minimum, yeah, that's hard for any team, especially for a team like Burrell going against a team like Reynolds. So there was a lot of things that had to go right for Burrell. And I thought a lot of them did at one time, and you switch that around. Damian Barr gets a decision over Jalen Wagner. Of course, that changes momentum. AJ Corrado, maybe he's able to get a fall. Maybe he's able to get a tech. Who knows? Colby Christie doesn't give up a fall to Cole Toy. Again, things change. So, at the end of the day, Reynolds did what Reynolds had to do, and then they took care of business against Southern Columbia as well to win their 5th straight PIAA state title in AA. So, I mean, it's, Mason Beckman tweeted out, it's taxes, death, and Reynolds wrestling, because you always know that Reynolds wrestling is going to give you everything they got, and there's a pretty darn good chance that they're going to win a state title every year.
And I'll tell you what, this was a year that you thought maybe because of the lack of state medalists that they had this year, that this could be the year they get knocked off. But, and Burrell came really close to making that happen with Damian Barr. I think every match he's huge, right? He's either the guy who wins it for him, which he won it against Burgestown. He won it against Chestnut Ridge. But, and hey, he had a heck of a season. So, he comes up a little bit short in a tough toss-up match, but now you look at the rest of the way and how it kind of played out. I tell you what, you got to be proud of how Burrell finished up, because after that loss, they bounce right back, right? They come in for that 3rd place match against Boiling Springs, another team that, you may say Boiling Springs might be favored ahead of them, but Burrell takes care of business 26-13.
Yeah, great match again with Boiling Springs, and Boiling Springs is very similar to a Burrell team because they're good throughout. They don't have any real superstars. You look at some of the guys on their roster. Michael Dugan's probably the best guy on their team, but you have Ralph Barber at 120. He's probably one of their better guys as well. Eli Bounds is pretty tough. So there was a lot of comparables between these two. And it really, again, started off pretty solid for Burrell. Ian Oswalt, he has a little bit of trouble with Coben Carper, who I really like him a lot, and he was able to keep it to decision. But Aaron Edwards then gets a big win over freshman Ian Wilson of Boiling Springs, 6-3. That was a toss-up match. And then Michael Dugan, he only gets a decision at 152, which, again, I think that kind of washes out him and Ian Oswalt. Damian Barr comes back for a big win over Jaden Barrick. AJ Corrado gets a decision over Eli Crum. So you could see how close these were. There weren't a ton of falls, bonus points in this match. There was a lot of decisions, a few majors. So this was a very tightly contested bout. And, I thought Burrell wrestled really strong. Boiling Springs is one of those household names as well. Chestnut Ridge, Boiling Springs, Reynolds, Saucon Valley, Southern Columbia. They've been at the state tournament every year for the past decade, it seems. So, they were going to come and bring it. But good job by Burrell. I think they are truly the 3rd best team in the state, no doubt about it.
And I think another turning point match was once again Damian Barr. We talk about him. It seems like every time Burrell has a big match, but his win against Jaden Barrick, Michael Dugan gets that win. If Damian Barr loses there, then all of a sudden, things are starting to turn back to Boiling Springs' favored. But Barr gets the win 6-2 over Barrick, and that just I feel like it just cemented things, right? Corrado comes out and gets a win, and just kind of built the momentum for Burrell the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, it really did, and it's interesting to see how different dynamics, because Burrell, of course, Ian Oswalt, AJ Corrado, big name guys, but it's really the rest of the guys that makes such a big difference. We saw it in Chestnut Ridge match. We saw it throughout the state tournament here. So Burrell, they wrestled really, really tough, and I know they feel good that they went home with a trophy, because it's been one of the goals of Coach Josh Shields for a long time, to get back there, and they have to be happy with how they performed.
Yeah, and coming away with 3rd place and giving the champs all they can handle. You look at next year, I think we talk about this every year when we start the show, Jeff, right? Who's going to be the one to knock off Burrell? Who's the one that's going to be the one to end a streak? Is there one that's going to end a streak next year? I mean, here's where you look at this team. Ian Oswalt and AJ Corrado, both seniors, so those are the studs. You always got at least typically bonus points, honestly, from those guys in almost all the matches. But other than that, I mean, they don't lose too much. Aaron Edwards is another guy they'll lose. Colby Christie up in the heavier weights is a senior. But other than that, everyone else is back.
Yeah, I mean, I said this before. I'm not ever going to pick against Burl until someone dethrones them. I mean, how can you? That's a pretty bold statement. They're how many champions in a row of the WPIAL? They're not going to lose anytime soon, I don't think. And I think it's inevitable that they're always going to be battling. And next year, yeah, there's going to be some teams that I think are chomping at the bit. I think Mount Pleasant's going to have a good team next year. Burgettstown, they graduate a couple guys, but they have a good young group of kids coming up. So, sure, there's going to be guys that push Burl, but there's something about Burl, man. Josh Shields, Isaac Greeley, all those guys up there, because there's 9 coaches, so I can't list them all. But they do things right. They whatever they're doing is really working. So it's really fun to see. Sometimes people hate to see like the Yankees winning all the time, and but it's also fun. And I like Burl because of that, because you always don't think they're going to win, right? You're always second guessing. This is the year they're not going to make it, and they prove you wrong, which is really cool to see. And they come together strong as a team. They really do wrestle hard as a team, not so much as individuals. Like you watch them in Hershey, and I feel like every time I'm at the team duel tournament, I'm always right in front of the mat that they're on. So I feel like for the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've seen intimately their guys in the team atmosphere, and they really do, just like, they care. Every single one of their guys is on that line. They're all wrestling. They're all helping each other out. It's just nice to see. It's fun to see, and that's why Burrow is just going to continue winning.
Yeah, you look at some of those opponents you mentioned, Mount Pleasant, also Quaker Valley, throw them into the mix. Should be a competitive team next year against Burl. But Burgettstown's the one, obviously, that I'm looking out for, because they do lose Shane Kemper, and that's a big loss for Burgettstown. He was a bonus points almost every single match he wrestled in. But other than that, Garrett Suika was a senior for him. Turner Lehman was a senior for him. And Nate Neal was a senior. That was about it for Burgettstown. So they're bringing back all those young studs they had, 106 all the way up through to, 138, 145. They bring everything back. On top of that, you got Joey Baronic at the heavyweight. He's going to be there for the next 3 years because he was only a freshman this year. So to me, I feel like Burgettstown, if they can space out the weights, which is always a question, but if they can space them out, they're going to be the team that everybody's circling to say, hey, here's a rematch we might see for a 3rd straight year, and this may be the year it happens. I agree with you. You can't pick against Burrow right now, but Burgettstown's that one team that I'm excited to see how they look next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Reynolds and Burl are kind of similar in that sense, because, Southern Columbia, this was the 4th year in the row they wrestled Southern Columbia in the state dual tournament finals. And everyone said, this is the year Southern Columbia's going to knock them off. This is the year. They said that last year. They said that this year, and it's just not happening, right? So like Reynolds, Burl continues to kind of find a way, right? And we look at the lineups next year. Southern Columbia has a great team coming back next year too. But, Reynolds is still Reynolds, and they show up, man. Just like there's something in the water up there. There's something in the water in Burl. There's something in the water up in Reynolds that they know how to get the job done.
Looking at AAA, Central Dauphin defeats Springford 32-28. Waynesburg defeats Williamsport in the semifinals 50-13. A couple of highlight matches. Braden Bauer at 132 defeats Colton Stone King 6-4. Wyatt Henson beats Riley Bauer 7-4. Kale Nasdio beats Kai Sheftick by major decision, but a dominant performance outside of that from Waynesburg.
Yeah, no surprise there. They just completely dominated. I thought both Bowers wrestled well. Braden getting that win over Colton Stone King, but also Riley Bauer battling with Wyatt Henson. And Kale Nasdio at 106, a state runner-up this year, beat a very, very good freshman in Kai Sheftick. So, some bright spots for Williamsport. And I think they wrestled them tough. It just wasn't enough, and we kind of knew that, right? We knew that it wasn't going to be enough, and Waynesburg just went in and dominated, right? There was no second guessing what Waynesburg was about, man. They were coming for that state title, and that's what they got.
Yeah, they ended up forfeiting at 285 pounds. That could have been a match won by Ryan Howard, where they would have only lost 2 matches in that entire duel. So that sets up the matchup with Central Dauphin for the title, and it was 42-3. Waynesburg defeats Central Dauphin. The lone win for Central Dauphin came at 189. Timmy Smith beating Eli Makel 2-1.
I mean, you don't have to say it like that. The lone win for CD, like, I mean, you're
Yeah,
pouring
I know
salt in
it's
the
more
wound.
modern and everything, but
Yeah,
like this is a Whippeal show, so I'm just proud of Waynesburg. That's all.
you're
Sorry.
proud of Waynesburg. Yeah, I'm proud of Waynesburg too. They deserve. They're tough. I just, I would have liked to seen my Central Dolphin Rams battle a little bit. And you know what, Coach Jeff Swigert from Central Dolphin, I read in an article afterwards that he said, he was like, Waynesburg may be the most balanced team that he's ever faced. Now, that's saying something if Jeff Swigert says that, because Jeff's been coaching for 37 years, and he's coached Central Dolphin to 5 different state championship titles. He's seen the Alton brothers. He's seen, Northamptons, Eastons, all of them. So, like, for him to say that this Waynesburg team is one of the most balanced teams that he's ever faced, that's saying something. And they knew going into that what the odds were and stacked up against them. Some key matches that I thought, obviously Mac Church and Matt Repost, rematch from last year, where that controversial caution call that gave Matt Repost the win over Church to send him down into the consolation round. They end up wrestling for third and fourth, with Church winning that one there. Church is now at 126. He wrestles Matt Repost, beats him in a very, very tight 2-1 match. But then Cole Hammett had a very nice win over Josh Miller, who we had talked about on the last show, because he pinned Matt Mayer, which propelled them to win over Becca. Cole Hammett, state runner-up this year, gets a big win over Josh Miller, who was a state medalist last year. I thought that was an impressive performance by him. And then Wyatt Henson and Rocco Welsh each had, decent guys. Ryan Garvick's a freshman. Wyatt Henson got a major on him, and Rocco majored Bryce Buckman, a senior, who we saw them wrestle at the Super Region. Tim Smith got the win over Makel at 189. And Noah Tustin, I thought, had a great win over Nate Mosey, who's a very solid wrestler for CD. Tustin is a guy who, was eliminated after the individual sectional tournament, so he's been on a rest for a long, long time. And then Kai Sheptick got a very nice win over fellow top incoming freshman William Flanagan from CD at 106.76. So I thought that was a big win for him. All around, this just kind of summarized, I'm sure they wanted the shutout, but this just summarized how darn good Waynesburg really is.
Yeah, you see a lot of teams as well. I mean, once they get the title wrapped up, they forfeit out. It was good to see Waynesburg wrestle all the way through the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times where you see teams, forfeit out or even send some backups in. And, in fact, I've seen it with CD. We were ahead in some tournament, in the state tournament, and, there was a couple backups that they put into, and I think there was a Joey Napoli and Walter Peplin match that was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen because they sent in backups. So, yeah, it's nice to see, some of these guys continuing through and wrestling hard. And I don't think there was ever any question in their mind that they were going to wrestle hard through that match. They wanted to dominate. And Waynesburg lost 2 team points, one at 126 and one at 145. So, it probably should have been 44-3 in reality, but there was unsportsmanlike conduct. A little taunting, I think, was going on. So, I don't know. Waynesburg just wanted to rub it into me, I guess.
That's it. They were just thinking about Jeff Upson, not.
I mean, why not?
Central Dolphin or anybody else,
They knew.
I'm thinking they gave the Waynesburg shirt to the wrong guy, because you're seeming a little too Central Dolphin over there today.
All I'm saying is, look, I've been a proud supporter of Waynesburg, all year. They have one of the best teams in the nation. Don't get me wrong. All I'm saying is, when you're coming at my team like that, I'm gonna feel some type of way. That's all. And look, I wear my Waynesburg shirt proud, no problem. But I have green underneath that as well.
When you look at next year, so Waynesburg winning back-to-back WPIAL titles, winning a state title, they're going to lose some guys, which is expected. But I agree with Coach Weigert. Actually, I had one of the deepest lineups, 106 all the way to 285. I think you and I talked about this, Jeff, when we went there to watch them in Chartiers Valley in the first duel of the season. How there was no holes, and there's no way you could bump around against this team. But they lose some seniors, right? They lose state champ Luga Augustine, state champ Wyatt Henson. You lose Ryan Howard. You lose a backup, but a solid backup in Darnell Johnson. You lose Nate Stevenson as well. So you still have a lot of core guys, right? You have Mac Church. You have Cole Hammett. You bring back Rocco Welsh. You bring back Kai Sheftig, Xander Faturos, Joe Simone, but Colton Stone King. But at the end of the day, they lose a few big pieces.
Yeah, I mean it's all about how they're able to plug those holes, right? Plug them up with new wrestlers. Whether it's guys that weren't in the lineup this year, whether it's guys coming up from the junior high program. And here's the thing, Waynesburg, yes, we talked about what they're losing, right? But when you have 5 state finalists, there is, you can give up some of that, and I'm not saying Waynesburg has you look at a bank account, Waynesburg's they're multimillionaire. They're losing $1 million. They're still pretty rich, right? Waynesburg is going to have to find a way to maybe spread out the love a little bit, right? Depending on how big guys are getting. We saw that be a problem with them, 2 years ago when they had Colton Stone King not being able to get in the lineup. So I think if everyone grows or not grows into certain weights, I think you're going to find a well-balanced team again. They have a good youth program. They have a good junior high program. The question is there any other team in the WPIAL that's going to be able to hang with them, knowing how far ahead Waynesburg was this year than the rest of the pack, right? Seneca Valley loses a ton, right? Seneca Valley is going to be down a little bit. Canamac, they return a lot, but they also are pretty inexperienced, I think, overall. You look at like a Franklin Regional. I think Franklin Regional is going to have a good year next year. Franklin Regional is young. They do lose Carter Dybert, but I think they are young, and I think they're going to be a pretty solid team. I think they impressed us this year with how well they wrestled. So there's a few that I think can challenge, but I really don't see anyone touching Waynesburg. I just not next year, not for a couple years. And like you said, all those guys that they lose, yes, but they have state champion Max Church, two-time state finalist Rocco Welsh. They have Colton Stone King, state medalist. They have Joe Simone, who's probably going to be a state medalist next year. Xander Faturos, who's probably going to do pretty well for them next year. The people who really affects them is having a heavyweight, an anchor like Ryan Howard for 4 years straight. That's going to hurt them, right? Unless Noah Tustin gets real big and can go up to heavyweight, and Eli Makel goes up to 215, I don't know. But they'll figure it out, and I really don't see. I can't see anyone right now touching Waynesburg next year, not with what they have coming back.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, you're right. Seneca Valley losing a lot. Hempfield, another big team who is one of the top 5 in the state. They lose 3 stud seniors, so they're going to be hurting a little bit. Not hurting a little bit. I mean, I think they're still going to be good next year. You mentioned Franklin Regional. They lose in addition to Dybert. They also lose Garrett Thompson. They lose Mario Sarnik. So they're going to lose a little bit of depth too. Canamac, they didn't have that one solid guy, right? I mean, first time they didn't have a wrestler in Hershey, I think, since like 1970. Now, granted, if it was a normal year, Andrew Binney would have been there. Tyler O'Haley would have been there, but they at least, they don't have that stud wrestler that they've had in the past. Now, but I think Andrew Binney could be close, and I think he's that next guy for them. But they don't have. But we'll see how they rebound. I think they're going to be tough next year. I think Canamac will be in that mix, in that 2-3 mix. But yeah, as far as Waynesburg goes, I mean, it's crazy to think you lose 2 state champs plus a couple other key contributors like Stevenson, like Howard, and at the end of the day, you're still going to probably be head and shoulders above the field next year.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an analogy of like how rich you are. I mean, they're a very wealthy team with a lot of wealth, and yeah, you're going to take a hit, but I look at it more on the state level. So is it enough?
That was my next question. How are they looking in the state then?
Yeah, I mean, they're clearly, going to be one of the top teams in the state. You look out east, and Nazareth is going to have, Nazareth is always going to be a team that has. Now they lose a good amount this year as well. They have a few seniors that are pretty integral to them. But they're going to have a lot of guys coming back. Sonny Saster's coming back. Sean Kinney's coming back. They have a lot of guys that are coming back. Nick Foster. And you look at guys like Bethlehem Catholic. If they can get guys in the right positions, I think they're going to be a very good dual team yet again. But the question is, can they replicate? Can Waynesburg replicate what they did this year, even without all those quote studs? I think they can. I think they should be in the mix. I think preseason they'll be right number one in the state where they should be. But I think there'll be some teams nipping at their heels a little bit. Out east is probably the biggest threats, and Bethlehem Catholic, who knows? They may bring in some people. They may have some guys coming up through the junior high program that are just going to change the dynamic. But I would never look past a Nazareth or a Becca team, because they always come to wrestle hard.
Looking at it really quick, Nazareth, actually only big name that they lose is Drew Cleary.
Right.
Outside of that, they bring a lot of guys back. So you got to like those guys. And you look at Bethlehem Catholic, they have some good guys they're going to lose as well. But Evan Gleason is probably one of the bigger names that they lose.
Matt Mayer
as well. But that's pretty much about it. So, I mean, I think those two teams are definitely going to be the biggest challengers to Waynesburg to be able to repeat as state champs. We're going to see if we can get Joe Throckmorton on the show. He's actually finishing up his banquet right now with his team. Before we do that, let's throw to Nick Fuller of the Tactical Mind so he can talk a little bit about what he has going on. And we really appreciate Nick's sponsorship.
This is the Tactical Mind, and I work with athletes in the field of sports psychology as a cognitive performance coach. Within 5 minutes of talking to a parent, they make the connection right away that this would be great for my kid to have when they're in college, when they're just going through the ups and downs of high school. Who wouldn't benefit from having more self-awareness? Who wouldn't benefit from having the ability to self-regulate our emotions and our counterproductive thoughts? Who wouldn't benefit from having more optimism, not just on the field, but in life?
Back or on for us as he sees if he can call him. He's on. I don't think he'd be available via Skype just because he was at his banquet for the team. So I know he mentioned the later the better if we can get him on. So as Jeff tries to do that, coming up this weekend on Friday, the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. We got a couple of guys from Waynesburg who will be wrestling in this one. It's going to be Friday. It's going to be this Friday. With the matchup at 4 o'clock, it's going to be the WPIAL All-Stars against the Maryland All-Star team. And then at 6 o'clock, we have the PA All-Star team against the United States All-Star team. Always a fun event. It's going to be held at the Hilton Garden Inn South Point. And I'm assuming that, tickets are limited, right, Jeff? So to be able to get in, it's going to be, or you're pretty much going to be watching a lot of it on Flow, I would assume.
Yeah, so we're not selling tickets, so there won't be any admissions. Only parents and coaches are allowed in due to capacity limits. And, it was just something that we had to do with COVID and with everything going on right now. Even with, we're seeing a kind of a surge a little bit in cases right now. So it was a safe thing to do. And having to cancel last year was such a hard decision for us as a committee to have to pull the plug on it, but it was ultimately it was the right decision. So this year we're just kind of having it in a self-isolated area. Pitt's locked down right now anyway, so there's a good thing we did end up having it on in a hotel where we're self-contained. The wrestlers stay there, the coaches are there. We have everything that we need to go there. We're having our banquet there. Everything's ready to go. So it does. It does not bode well for folks that are used to going to the Pitt field house to watch it. But, it's the way of the world right now. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. So, we're just glad to be wrestling, because to be honest, last year not being able to wrestle was such a, everyone on our committee and all the wrestlers and all the coaches, and I mean, everyone was understanding, but it was just so hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you. Well, let's see, did you be able to call Joe on the number by chance?
I got him in here. Can you see him, Greg?
I do not.
He's muted right now. Coach, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. How are you? Are you either at your banquet or are you leaving the banquet?
Well, I left the banquet and we're on my way home right now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you stopping in to talk to us a little bit about, the state championship title that you just won, not in Hershey, but in Cumber Valley High School, which was actually a nice place because, it's your colors. So it kind of looked like you won in your home gym a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It felt, it's actually pretty cool. It was, this match even indicated sometimes, but at the same, but yeah, it was nice to have a good atmosphere.
So talk about the mindset going into Hershey, right? Or Harrisburg, we'll say. You're having a great team. You saw what happened at the individual tournament, but how do you keep those guys so laser focused at the task at hand to go in there and just dominate like they did? Because you had to have Noah Tustin, who was eliminated from the sectional tournament, it seems like 2 months ago. You had to keep him hungry and keep him in shape. How difficult was it for you as a coach to really kind of traverse through that?
Yeah, we've had probably the most incentive of any team in the whole state to keep all that together. So it was a little bit easier. I'm not saying it was easy. We actually, had a lot of, in the beginning of the year, when in December, we weren't able to be together because of COVID. So it kind of gave us that time at the end of the year to work on a lot of things. So the guys that even got knocked out of the tournament, we had a lot of things to work on, and almost all of them are all of them are returning next year.
Right.
So for the most part, and so we were able to keep that, and we had already talked about the whole time. We knew the strategy going in, and that we were going to have to make weight after that, and we were very adamant about keeping our guys for the most part down to weight. The only guys that really switched was Mac and Xander, and that was a beneficial thing to Xander and Mac both. So it was kind of mutual. Everybody else kind of held their ground, and it's hard when you have that good of a team and nobody can change weights like they did in other teams.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it, how well balanced the team is, and my former head coach Jeff Swigert of Central Dolphin was quoted in the paper and said, "I think this is the most balanced team I've ever faced." And I said that was such a profound statement because I mean, Central Dolphin's seen a lot of really tough teams over the years, and I think that's kind of the whole sentiment after the state tournament was, is this one of the best teams ever to come out of Pennsylvania? And I mean, has it sunk into you that this is one of the best teams probably in the history of Pennsylvania, dual team wise? I mean, there's not a single hole. Those guys are so solid throughout. I know you knew that coming into the year, but to see it come to fruition, I mean, it's got to be pretty special.
Yeah, it actually is. And I actually read that same article on the way home. We have a 3.5 hour drive home back to Waynesburg. And so I was quoting that in my banquet tonight. With all my guys there, and I said, it's a pretty profound statement from Jeff to, quote us as probably one of the best teams ever as a dual meet team. So, yeah, that was a pretty great statement from Jeff on our part.
And tomorrow you start the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. You got a couple studs going there. Luca and Wyatt going to be on Team PA. It's got to be exciting, to kind of celebrate with them because Wyatt is he's come a long way, right, from being a freshman at a tough weight as a freshman at Waynesburg to come back now to win 2 state titles back to back, and of course Luca, right? It's a shame that we're not in the field house this year, right? Because that's going to be Luca's future home, but it's got to feel pretty nice and pretty good to have those two seniors that have been so important and integral to your program, kind of send them off in that way.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit tonight at the banquet also. It's just, it's a great thing to send everything off. It's actually, as much as, it seems like some people think the season was all drawn out because of the extra weeks of the individual and everything, but now it's all coming the snap of a finger and everything's ending all in a couple of weeks here. And but it's an honor to be in a classic, and we're, they actually asked Wyatt, even before the classic committee got together, pretty much when they put the USA team together, they put Wyatt in there as one of the guys, and we appreciate that like crazy. And they go through a lot of work to get to that point. And so, yeah, it's such an honor. And I've been fortunate enough, I don't know, it's probably been almost 10 or 11 years in a row that I've had somebody in there, whether it's on the WIPU or PA team. So it's definitely an honor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is like a homecoming for you too, because you're there every year. I mean, every year I've been there, I've seen you, and you've always had somebody there and competing. So it's a nice little celebration and a lot of good wrestling too. So we're going to see some really good matches, and we appreciate your time tonight. Congratulations on winning not only your second WPIL title, but your the first state title in Waynesburg history. Awesome job. And I know I speak for Greg and I both that it was a pleasure watching this Waynesburg Raider team all throughout the year. It was just every year, every match, we knew it was just going to be a lot of fun. So we appreciate your time here tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing all that you do too. You covered us like crazy this year, and we really do appreciate it, because it keeps us up and keeps all of our, they do it for a lot of different reasons, and especially with COVID the way it was, you kind of brought it all to our fans and everybody else. So we really appreciate it.
Well, we really do appreciate it, Joe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. See you tomorrow.
Bye. Greg, I'll let you back in. There you go, back. You're back.
Hey, I think what happened there was that because you were afraid I might say something like, hey, Jeff's always got a Central Dolphin shirt underneath Waynesburg, so you might want to take his and give it to me. And you're afraid I might mention it, so you just kept me off the call. I think that's what it was.
I wish that was all. I wish that was all it was. It was just I only had room for two. It was I'm the star of the show, so I mean I can't not be on it. So I had to. I just wanted to see your reaction, honestly.
Hey, does your head fit in that house? I mean, my goodness. I mean, is there enough room in there for Lauren and the little one? Or, geez.
I'm trying to be more like Willie Saylor. Willie Saylor is like the greatest mind in wrestling. I'm trying to take on a more arrogant tone. So that way maybe it'll get us more followers and more likes.
Is that what it is, huh?
Yeah.
Or pitting myself and Eric against each other, whatever works. Whatever gets viewership, right? I'm
a pot stirrer, right? I like to stir the pot. I like to talk wrestling. I mean, I'm like Ron Burgundy, right? I have many leather-bound books. My apartment smells of rich mahogany. That's just the kind of person I am, Greg. You should know that by now.
I should. I really should. Since I used to do the show there, but maybe things changed.
Yeah, I mean,
last time I got to step foot in the Upson house, I think your head got bigger. That's why you told me to do the show from here, right? Because I just couldn't fit there anymore.
Stop.
Your head was so big.
Stop. All right. Can we talk about the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic, because Joe was talking about, and you couldn't hear anything Joe was saying, correct?
No, I didn't hear a word.
Okay, so I mean,
unfortunately.
Basically what we expected, right? They had to show up. They had to make weight. Switching of weights between Xander and Mac was beneficial for both of them. But he actually said he read the quote from Jeff Swigert at the banquet tonight, and kind of said like that was very profound coming from Jeff. So I thought that was pretty neat. And every year I've been involved in the Classic, Joe's been there with a wrestler, and I think he says it's like 10, 15 years straight that he's had a wrestler. So, it's just, it's like him, he's just going to be there every year, right? They're always going to have a guy. And, we can't wait for tomorrow. As you mentioned, Team Maryland last year was supposed to be in the Classic. When we had to pull the plug, Maryland's, was on the receiving end of that they were not able to come and wrestle. But this year Maryland is back. And, they have a pretty pretty solid team that's going to be going against a really, really tough Whippeal team here, Greg. I think this Whippeal team is probably one of the best teams that I've seen in a couple years, and that's mainly because, you have those three Hempfield studs, right? Bergen, Linzenbigler, and Vance. But then you throw in guys like Kenny Dushek, Ian Oswalt, Carter Dybert. These are all guys that could have potentially been on the USA team, right? Had things going a little bit different ways. The Maryland team's tough, but I don't know if they're going to have enough for the team WPIL this year.
Well, and what's crazy is you look at this WPIL team, it's loaded, right? I mean, I can't see a weakness within this 120 to 285. There's 6 WPIL guys who are on the state team.
Yeah.
So just imagine if some of those guys were down here on this WPIL team as well. I mean, that just tells you just how strong the WPIL was, not only this year, but, just throughout these guys' careers and how good these guys have been, and so much fun to watch over the last 4 years. The WPIL team consists of Ethan Bergen of Hempfield at 120, Carter Dybert of Franklin Regional 126, Ian Oswald of Borough 132, Kenny Dushek of Blackhawk 138, John Altieri of Norman 145, Ty Linzenbigler of Hempfield 152, Cole Spencer of Pine Richland at 160, Sammy Starr of Kiski at 170, Trent Schulteis of Freedom 182, Justin Hart of Hampton at 195, Logan Harmon of Armstrong at 220, and Isaiah Vance of Hempfield at 285. Jeff, who are some of the matchups that you're really excited to see here?
Well, Maryland has some serious studs, and you see the McDonough school in here, and for a lot of the youth folks, the McDonough duels are probably one of the biggest youth duels, pre-high school duels in the country. They have a great team, and it's led by Cooper Flynn. Cooper Flynn's and Pennsylvania fans should know him because he's the one who beats Mason Gibson in the Super 32 finals this year. That was a great match, and Cooper Flynn won that over Mason Gibson, who was a returning Super 32 champion. He's at 120 against Ethan Bergen. That's going to be a tough match for Ethan. Cooper Flynn's probably one of the top, depending on the publications you look at, he's top 3 in the nation, wherever you look, and he's going to Virginia Tech. He's a 3-time national prep All-American, 1-time champ. So, he's going to bring the house. The interesting piece here is Keontae Hamilton at heavyweight, who's one of the top-ranked guys in the nation, is wrestling in both the undercard and the main card. So he's wrestling Isaiah Vance from Hempfield because Maryland had a hard time finding a heavyweight. So they said, well, how about Keontae how about he just wrestles twice? So he's going to wrestle Isaiah Vance and Nate Schoen in the same day. I give him a lot of credit for that because I wouldn't want to wrestle Nate Schoen, and Isaiah Vance in like a 5-month span. So he's going to have him in a 2-hour span. So that's going to be a good match. Hamilton is a guy who really came on to his own. Last year he 2-time Maryland state champion, national prep champion. He's kind of one of the best. So it's going to be fun to see him go against both Vance and Schoen when the USA wrestles Team PA.
So is there any other, those are going to be great matchups for sure. But and obviously the two big matchups you just talked about, both featuring the Hempfield wrestlers and Bergen and Vance, and both guys who are going to the same college as well and going to Army West Point.
Yeah.
Is there any other matchups that you're really excited about from the Maryland WPIL matchup?
I'm excited for 160. For a couple of reasons. One reason is because it's an all-PA lineup here. Harrison Trahan from McDonough School is actually a Pennsylvania wrestler. He wrestles for the McDonough School, but he's from Stewartstown, Pennsylvania. Wrestles for Team PA when he wrestles in folk or freestyle and Greco. So he's a PA guy. Just he attends McDonough School. Again, it's a private school or a prep school that sees a lot of tough guys from across the nation. Cooper Flynn's from Tennessee. He's wrestles for McDonough. So, that's a good match. So Trahan and Spencer at 160, both are Ivy League guys. So Trahan's going to Brown, Spencer's going to Penn at 160. That's going to be a good match. I think Damian McGee from Bullis School versus John Altieri at 145 is going to be a really good match as well. Obviously John Altieri was second this year to Wyatt Henson, but I think he's shown that he's pretty close, right? And, I look at a guy like Damian McGee from Bullis, who's a national prep All-American. He's very good in his own right. I think it's going to be a tough match for Altieri, but, I'm looking forward to it. Again, I'm looking forward to a lot of these undercard matches, if you will. Trent Schulteis, he's going to have a tough match. Gene Quidola from Bullis School as well. It's mainly a school of Bullis and McDonough making up here of the Maryland team. But, there's a lot of big name guys on both sides. Carter Dybert, I think, against Pinckney from Hammond. I think Carter Dybert's a guy who's ranked in the nation, so I think he's expected to win. Kenny Dushek, I think, should be favored to win. I think Ian Oswalt should be favored to win. I think overall, though, you're going to see a lot of close bouts, but I just think the WPIAL has just a little bit more gas in the tank to get past Maryland.
The 6 o'clock matchup, PA versus the United States. Again, 6 WPIAL wrestlers on Team Pennsylvania. You look at this matchup here, Brett Unger of Notre Dame GP is at 120, Joey Fisher of South Park at 126, Dylan Chappell of Seneca Valley 132, Brock McMillan of Glendale at 138, Wyatt Henson of Waynesburg at 145, Alejandro Herrera Rondon of Seneca Valley at 152, AJ Corrado of Burrell at 160, Luca Augustine of Waynesburg at 170, 182 Cale Krebs of Montoursville, 195 Drew Cleary of Nazareth, 220 Jake Lucas of Cumberland Valley, and 285 Nate Schoen of Selinsgrove. We do lose the matchup of Shane Van Ness versus Wyatt Henson. Van Ness pulling out after wrestling in the last qualifier here for the Olympic trials this past weekend. So you'd lose that matchup, but you still got AHR. He's going up against Victor Ivanovich of Broadview Heights, Ohio.
Yeah, so, I said how good the WPIAL team is and how tough they're going to be against Maryland. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Team PA. It's we as a committee, I think sometimes we do a too good of a job making the USA team because we don't give Pennsylvania much of a chance. Brett Unger, Richie Figueroa from Selma, California is probably going to be one of the highlight matches. Brett Unger, number 4 in the nation. Richie Figs is number 1. He may be pound for pound number 1 as well, depending on where you look publication-wise. Unger obviously beating both Gary Steen and Mason Gibson in the same day. I think obviously he's going to have a pretty darn good shot against Richie Figueroa, who is one of the best in the nation pound for pound. But that wouldn't surprise me if that goes USA's way. Joey Fisher from South Park, number 20 in the nation, going against Drake Ayala from Fort Dodge, Iowa, an Iowa commit. Drake is a savage, man. He is really tough. I've seen him multiple times in his career. He's going to Iowa. He wrestles hard. He's number 1 in the nation, right? So tough matchup there. Dylan Chappell, 132, number 19 in the nation, going against number 3 Chance Lamar from Corvallis, Oregon. Chance Lamar is he's one of the best. So again, tough matchup there. Brock McMillan, Carter Young. I like this matchup. You got a guy like Brock McMillan who surprisingly doesn't find himself in the national rankings, which is interesting because he's a 3-time Pennsylvania state champion. Carter Young, on the other hand, is a guy who comes in ranked number 6 in the nation. So, I think that should be a good matchup. We talked about Wyatt Henson not being able to go against Shane Van Ness, who wrestled in the last chance Olympic qualifier in Texas this last weekend. He had to pull out. But Caleb Rathjen from Iowa is not a slouch. He's coming down from 152, where he's ranked number 16 in the nation. He's coming down. We give 5 pounds allowance for weigh-in, so he'll have to come down to 150, but he's going to wrestle one of the best. And both these guys are going to Iowa. So, you look at the number of Iowa commits on here, there's at least 3, I know that, which is kind of interesting because, we don't necessarily see that all the time. And you had mentioned probably one of the best matches, and this is now the feature match, and that's AHR versus Victor Ivanovich from Ohio. This is the number 1 versus number 3. So AHR, we talked about it on War Up the last time we had him on. He says, not only I get to end my senior year undefeated, but, I get to take on the number 1 guy in the nation in Victor Ivanovich. That's pretty awesome. I think Allie's going to wrestle him very tough. I think this is going to be the feature bout of the evening. But again, Pennsylvania is not really favored in any match other than Wyatt Henson versus Rathjen, who is still coming down from 172. There's, there's not a lot of guys here where you're saying, I mean, maybe Luke Augustine over Dylan Walker. That's probably, I would say, favored for Luke Augustine. Dylan Walker, PA fans should know him. He won the Powerade this year. He gave Rune Lawrence his only loss of the year. So Rune Lawrence, of course, a state champion this year in AA, as a freshman at 172, his only loss in the entire season was to Dylan Walker of Cincinnati LaSalle. Luke Augustine's going to have him. So we could have seen that at Powerade, right? Had Luca wrestled in Powerade, we could have potentially seen this match, so it could have been a rematch. But Luca Augustine jumps up to number 8 in the nation after winning a PA state title. Dylan Walker drops because he finishes 5th in Ohio. He drops now to number 18 in the nation. So that's probably a match that could go either way. The one match that we were going to have that we didn't, Jagger Condomity at 160 versus Patty Gallagher from St. Ed's, that didn't happen. Jagger Condomity had to pull out, and Patty Gallagher had to pull out as well. So AJ Corrado is pulled up from the Whippeal team, and now he's on the USA or the PA team, where he's number 17 in the nation against Enrique Mangua from Ohio. That's going to be a pretty good match. I think AJ Corrado can find ways to win regardless. He just lost to Eric Gibson in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club card, but we know how he wrestles. He's going to bring everything he's got, and it may end up being close. You look at Peyton Kraft, number 10 in the nation from Blair, going against Cale Krebs. Cale Krebs, a guy who really wrestled well, and if you notice on our weights this year, we're not going. We're going old National Federation of High School matches here. You have the 70, 82, 95, 220, and 285 as opposed to 72, 89, 215. So that's nice that we get to bring down Cale Krebs to 82. Insert Drew Cleary from Nazareth at 195 against Jackson Smith from Georgia. Peyton Kraft, Cale Krebs should be a really good match. Jake Lucas, Emmanuel Skillings, Oklahoma, and then Nate Schoen, Kayante Hamilton, who we just talked about. That should be another fun match as well, Greg.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of really great matchups. Always great to see the Wrestling Classic, to see all the different matchups. So it should be a lot of fun. Again, 4 o'clock for the first matchup, 6 o'clock for the second. And stick with PA Power Wrestling. We'll be updating you all the way throughout the entire event to let you know what's been going on. But the wrestling doesn't end much after that now, Jeff, does it?
No, it doesn't. We're on the cusp of making a pretty big announcement. Very shortly we'll be making an announcement about an event we're holding. We got the Olympic team trials coming up with a lot of Pennsylvania wrestlers in it. We're gonna have, there's a whole bunch of other things going on. We're gonna get into freestyle Greco-Roman. So there's gonna be a lot to talk about here in the next couple of months. But it's really culminating in the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic to really highlight, the best wrestlers in the nation, right? So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait for it. It's gonna be a fun 2 days at the Classic.
Special thanks to Joe Throckmorton for stepping aside from his banquet to join us on the show, and then also congratulations to Waynesburg on winning a state title. Congratulations to Burrell for placing 3rd in the state. It's been a lot of fun wrapping up the high school wrestling season and finishing off this Friday with the Wrestling Classic. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in to War Up on the WPIAL.